Did you know that one Harvard study found that people spend 47% of their time thinking about something other than the thing they're currently doing? I'd be willing to bet that that number would be even higher if you narrowed it down to when we're working. I mean, can you even imagine that? Universally, we spend almost half of our time, half, wishing we were doing something else, completely missing out on whatever is right in front of us. I learned about that study from the final chapter of the book that inspired this series, which is Leadership Not by the Book by David Green, the CEO of Hobby Lobby. And this chapter is really all about the journey. But before we dive into this, make sure that you like this video. Take a second to be sure that you're subscribed to the channel and share this with someone that you know is going to be encouraged by this conversation as well. Now, unsurprisingly, there are a lot of Bible verses that caution us against this concept of wanting something other than what we have. The grass is greener on the other side, right? There's a lot of verses. There's Colossians 3:23, Ecclesiastes 9:10, Ephesians 6:7 through 8, Proverbs 21:5. I'll put all those in the description so that you can go and look them up later. But there's one story that David mentions here in the chapter that I really think demonstrates this concept better than any of the rest of them. And that's Joseph. And I don't mean Mary and Joseph. I mean Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat Joseph. I'm not going to read his whole story because it's way too long. It's a whole set of chapters in Genesis and all the struggles and challenges that we face as business owners. However, there is kind of a recap, a high-level summary of Joseph's story in the Psalms, which I actually didn't realize was there. But I'm going to read that because it gives us enough of a high-level reminder of what that story is in case it's not fresh for you. And, also the way that it's worded here, it actually brought out a few interesting themes for me. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this final episode of this series. So we're going to look at Psalm 105, and we're going to start in verse 16. This is in the NLT version. We're reading 16 through 22. It says, "He called for a famine on the land of Canaan, cutting off its food supply. Then he sent someone to Egypt ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. They bruised his feet with fetters and placed his neck in an iron collar. Until the time came to fulfill his dreams, the Lord tested Joseph's character. Then Pharaoh sent for him and set him free. The ruler of the nation opened his prison door. Joseph was put in charge of all the king's household. He became ruler over all the king's possessions. He could instruct the king's aides as he pleased and teach the king's advisors." Now, okay, first off, if you don't remember the original long version of the story, when it's talking about fulfill the dreams, it doesn't mean dreams in the way that we think of dreams sometimes of, like things that we're working towards, things that we want to do. These are literal dreams that God gave to Joseph when he was young, and was actually the reason that his brothers sold him into slavery in the first place, because they were jealous, right? So, but there are a few things that are specifically stated in this telling of it and worded in a way that I think is really interesting and has a lot to teach us. So the first one being that it says, "Then he sent someone to Egypt ahead of them." Now, when I think of the story of Joseph and his brothers selling him into slavery and all the things that he endures throughout that process, first off, just being a slave. And then, he works his way up. And so it looks like, okay, here's the purpose. This is why God brought him there. And he's working for Potiphar, who is a big, important guy in Egypt at the time. He's running his household. So, okay, we see it now. We see the fulfillment, right? Or the beginning of the fulfillment of those dreams. And then it's like, nope, because then Potiphar's wife decides to lie about Joseph, say that he tried to attack her, which he didn't do. Potiphar then throws Joseph in jail, and now he's a prisoner. And you're thinking, okay, so first he was a slave, looked like things were getting better. Then they got even worse, because prisoner is worse than slave in my book. He's a prisoner, and, we see that and we think, okay, well, is God even working? Like, what is going on here? And then he comes out of that and then he becomes the second in command to the Pharaoh, to the king, even higher than Potiphar. Like now we see the fulfillment of the dreams. And I've always looked at it kind of from the perspective of, even though Joseph's brothers did this evil thing and sold him into slavery and it was just horrible, and Joseph ended up having to go through these horrible times, I think about that verse. I think it's, what is it, Romans 8:28-29, of, God using anything to work things out for our good, right? According to his will. And so it's easy to look at the story of Joseph and say, okay, well, he's doing that. Clearly, we can see this as an example of no matter what you're going through, God can use this for his good. But hearing it worded in this way, that he sent someone to Egypt ahead of them, makes me rethink all of that, because this wasn't an afterthought. Joseph would not have been in Egypt had his brothers not sold him into slavery. That wasn't God using a bad situation and turning it into something good. That was God's plan all along, was to send him in that way. He planned for Joseph to have this specific journey. And when you look at the whole thing, it's not a coincidence that Joseph ends up in prison, because it's when he's in prison that he's able to interpret dreams for two other prisoners, which is what eventually ends up getting the attention of Pharaoh and getting him into the position that he is intended to be in all along, right? Those things had to happen in order for Joseph to end up where he needed to be. It wasn't an afterthought or God fixing a problem and finding a way to use it anyway. It was the plan, even though it looked pretty bad for Joseph most of the way through there, right? The second phrase that comes up in this telling is that it says, like, during all that time, that the Lord tested Joseph's character. This journey wasn't there for really any reason other than because it was necessary for Joseph. It was necessary for Joseph to prove himself not only to God that he would remain faithful and all of that, but to prove himself to himself that he would be his best. And we're actually going to get to that in a second. But, one of the things that Joseph does is that he works hard in any situation that he's put in to be the best, to rise to the top, right? And he needed that journey to prove to himself that he belonged in the role that God was putting him in. Not that he could do it alone, because he couldn't. Obviously, he couldn't interpret those dreams of his own talents. That came from God. But proving to himself that he could remain faithful and strong and, diligent to be worthy of the position, the role that God had in store for him. And then the third thing that stood out there was that Joseph was put in charge of all of the king's household. He didn't just survive this horrible journey that he went through. He literally fulfilled God's very specific calling on his life through all of this and became second in command. He saved all of Egypt with the role that he played there by, showing them how to store up food during the good times so that when the famine came, which he only knew about because of the dream he interpreted for Pharaoh, right? That, he showed them how to be able to survive, and not only for Egypt to survive, but for all of the surrounding nations to be able to come and survive as well. And that's what fulfilled that earlier dream of his brothers and everyone else coming and bowing to him, because he was elevated to that position of being second in command. So there are three really strong truths that came out of this final chapter for me. I think when I look back, they apply really well to the entirety of the book as a whole. But I think they were really brought out in this particular chapter. And the first one is that no matter where you find yourself right now, what season you're in, whether you're in a season where you're finding success, whether you're just getting started but it's really slow going, or you're, having to work a corporate or retail or some type of job while growing your business, or maybe you aren't even ready or able to start growing your business yet because you have to just be working. Wherever you're at in that journey, even if it's not where you want to be yet, strive to be your best. Like I said a few minutes ago, that is what really sets Joseph apart from almost any other person that we see in the Bible, because he's put in such a horrible, I mean, he's just put in so many horrible positions. And when you think about so early in his life, he was given this calling of great importance. I mean, this was not a small calling. He was told by God that you are going to be in this very elevated position. You are going to save the nations. Like, this is a very big thing that could give someone like him or like you and me a really big head, a really big ego. We could feel like we're too good for the journey, right? We're too good for all the things that we find ourselves having to go through, having to still work that corporate job or trying to balance the two and just having to, grow slower in our business maybe than we'd like because we spend 40 hours a week doing our day job, right? Looking at Joseph, like he had to be a slave, he had to be a prisoner, but what he did with that time was kind of the point. He worked to be the best slave. That's how he went from, brand new slave to head of Potiphar's household in the first place, which of course did not end super well for him, ended him in prison. But then while he was in prison, he did his best to be the best prisoner for the people who were running the prison, but also for all of the other inmates with him. And by being his best, giving his all the entire time, it's why he stood out to those other inmates. It's why he was able to interpret their dreams. It's why eventually they were able to tell Pharaoh about him and how he got pulled out of jail to interpret the dream and then elevated, right? All of these things would not have happened if he had grumbled and complained the entire way through, because he never would have stood out enough amongst all the other slaves or prisoners to get the attention, to be noticed, to end up at the next phase of his journey. And I just think that that's so much more important than we probably want to acknowledge, because, I know for myself, I've gone through many, many years of running a successful business early on as a vocal coach to then, starting over again when I switched into a new industry and realizing that I didn't know really anything about what I was doing in building a business in that industry. And it could have been very easy. And I definitely had my moments where I felt, yeah, I'm too good for this. Like, I should be past this point. Like, I've already built a successful business, so why am I struggling so much? And I know that I'm good at what I'm doing here. I know that I can help people, so why aren't they just flocking to me yet, right? And even now, I'm still working full time while growing my business at a slower pace than obviously I would be if I wasn't working full time. I've talked multiple times about what blessings I've found in that and why it's my preference at this point, my choice to do it that way and not to just quit my job and just put everything into the business right now. But it can be very easy to feel grumbly and complainy some days when, things are really busy at work and I either don't have the time to work on any of the stuff that I want to do for my business, or I just don't have the energy at the end of the day because I've been staring at a computer screen all day and I can't do it. I have to go and rest, and I can't work on the things that I had been wanting to work on all day, right? Just like what we said at the beginning, spending 40% of my time wishing I was doing that instead of doing this. It's easy to get into that trap sometimes. And I think this is such a great reminder that it's not just about being the bigger person or being humble or any of that. It's actually a really important part of the process. It's a necessary piece of the journey. And I'm starting to see this a little bit for myself, because a lot of the things that I learn and that I come across in my corporate life, the types of work that gets thrown my way, it informs how I help my clients in my personal business. I'm not doing the same things in both businesses, but it's giving me perspective and giving me insight that I would not have if I was just growing my own business and not having those experiences every day. So, yeah, there are days where I feel tired and therefore a little bit resentful that I'm in a place where I'm still working full time and doing that. But I can see how important that is to helping me grow the business that I actually want to be growing. And that kind of leads me to the second truth that stood out for me in this chapter, and that is that the journey that we're on is preparing us for whatever that success is supposed to look like. It's preparing us for that leadership role. It's preparing us to be the boss, if that's the case, if we're going to end up hiring employees, right? It's preparing us for whatever that looks like. There is no such thing as an overnight success, and thank God for that. Because you look at someone like Joseph and you think about if he had gone straight from being, the second youngest of, I think it's 12 brothers, to, catapulted to second in command for Pharaoh. I mean, besides just the fact that his youth at the time probably would have worked against him because there was a 13-year period between when he had those dreams and was sold into slavery and when he became that second in command. So besides just the life experience and the wisdom that comes with that, everything that he learned along the way, including, the ability to interpret dreams, which God gives him along the way, because we see him have that dream when he's younger, but I don't remember any spot where he interprets it or like really understands what it is meant to mean. So he has the dream, but it's an enigma like most of our dreams are for us. Throughout this process and throughout this journey that he goes through, as he's struggling and being diligent and faithful and being his best and working his hardest, regardless of where he finds himself, those are the reasons I believe that, God opens up to him the ability to interpret these dreams, which becomes literally the key to getting him out of prison and into the role he's supposed to be in. Overnight success for him would have been impossible. And I think it's true for us as well. The more that we can appreciate and even enjoy the things that we're struggling through and learning through our journey, whatever it looks like, the better prepared we are going to be for that leadership role or that version of success that we are meant to have. And that kind of leads again to the third truth that stood out to me, and that is that we experience the most growth during the hard times. When things are easy, when things are coming naturally to us, we may experience growth in our business in that case, where things are just coming easily, customers are finding us and all that stuff. But as people and as business owners, we grow the least during those times because everything is easy. And so we're not learning. We're usually imparting, we're imparting wisdom, or we're, producing something and giving it away or selling it, whatever. We're not taking the time to grow because we don't feel the need to. But when we face a challenge, when something comes to us that we don't yet understand or just isn't coming easily or naturally for us, that's when the most growth happens. And we see that all over the Bible. We see that in our own lives, that, the challenging, the dark times that we go through. When we look back after we make it through those valleys, we can see how much personal growth we've had during those times. And just on the practical side, for me, when a client comes to me with a need for their process, a need for their Trello setup or whatever that I don't know how to do, that's when the most growth happens for me, because now I have to go do research. I have to go learn about new capabilities within Trello, or learn ways that I can take what is possible and get creative with it and find a workaround, something that's going to be close enough, right? It's just like what we talked about in the last episode. Maybe not the perfect solution, but close enough to get them what they need, right? That's when the most practical growth happens for me, because it's when I'm most eager to learn and when it's most necessary for me to learn. So I think it's important for us to appreciate the role of those difficult times in our journey. Not just acknowledge it, but actually appreciate it, because we would grow stagnant if it weren't for those times. And our business would too. It wouldn't grow or scale to the level that any of us are probably working towards if it was just always easy. It's when those challenges come in that, it's that iron sharpens iron, right? That we need to work harder and push ourselves and actually give ourselves the opportunity to grow. I cannot believe that we've already come to the end of this series. It feels like it's been a long journey, but also like it's gone by like that at the same time. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. The wisdom that I've gleaned from this book, which again, go ahead and grab your copy. I'll make sure that I put it in the description if you want to grab a copy for yourself. But from this book, but along with the Bible verses and the different stories that reading this book led me to, it's been so enlightening. And there are just so many things that it still has me pondering and that I will probably be pondering for quite a while. I'm excited for what's to come here on the podcast. The next series that we're doing won't be starting until September, but it's going to be something completely different than what I've done in the past. I'm actually going to be sitting down and having a month-long conversation with someone that I know you are going to be so encouraged by. I highly recommend that you come back and check that out. But I would love to know if any part of this series brought you any interesting insights. I hope you'll share them with me in the comments. Thanks for watching this episode all the way to the end, and I hope that you liked it, and more importantly, that you found it helpful. If you did, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with another Christian business owner that you know is going to love it as much as you did. God bless you.